Thanks for tuning in to the Drive On podcast, where we're focused on giving hope and strength to the entire military community. Whether you're a veteran, active duty, guard, reserve, or a family member, this podcast will share inspirational stories and resources that are useful to you. I'm your host, Scott DeLuzio, and now let's get on with the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to Drive On. I'm your host, Scott DeLuzio, and today my guest is Robin Bartlett. Robin is an Army veteran, having served in Vietnam, and he's also the author of the book Vietnam Combat, Firefights and Writing History. We're going to discuss his experiences in Vietnam, but before we get into that, I want to welcome you to the show, Robin. I'm really glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Great to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things, before we get into your story, can we talk a little bit about your background, how you ended up in the Army and Vietnam? Were you drafted? Did you volunteer? All that kind of stuff. Kind of tell us a little bit about who you are and your background.
Sure. So I come from a military family. My grandfather went to West Point. My father went to West Point. My brother went to West Point. And my father got me an appointment to West Point, and I said no. 13 elementary and middle schools and 4 high schools is enough. I want no part of the Army. So I ended up going to college in Southern California. And it was the height of the Vietnam War as the buildup had begun and classmates were being drafted during the summer months. And I said, well, first of all, our family took it very seriously, the words in service to our country.
Mm-hmm.
They were all officers. And I said, well, I can't get drafted and I have to serve my obligation as an officer. So I went into the ROTC program at my college and proceeded along 4 years of training and preparation. And then at the ripe age of 21, I graduated from college and was commissioned as a second lieutenant on the same day. And being this brilliant 21-year-old, knowing everything there was to know because I had a college degree, right? I decided I would challenge myself with the most challenging thing that I could think of at the time, which was to volunteer for Airborne, Ranger, and assignment to the 82nd Airborne Division, the famous 82nd Airborne Division. And I got everything that I asked for and a lot more too.
Sure. It's funny how the family business comes back, and no matter how hard you fight it, and you may not want to go that same direction, but sometimes it just is fate. I don't know, destiny. You're going to end up in that anyways. And maybe without the war, maybe you wouldn't have. But
And it was that was the period of time where if you weren't going on to graduate school and if you weren't married and preferably had a child, then you had no deferment and you would have been drafted immediately.
Right.
Because it was the buildup of the war to the height of the Vietnam War in 1968. And as I said before, I really I felt the family obligation to serve as an officer. So this was just a very natural transition for me.
Yeah, and it probably helped that you had that background growing up with so many people from your family in the military, and you had you kind of knew what you're getting into a little bit more than maybe someone who had no military experience in their family, who got drafted, just kind of plucked at random, and they ended up getting drafted and going overseas. They maybe didn't really know what they were getting themselves into. So in a way that maybe helped you a little bit, but also maybe not so much because you did know it was coming, right?
I knew how to salute from a very young age. We used to answer the telephone at home. Colonel Bartlett's quarters, may I help you, sir? That was how you answered the phone at home.
And so you already had some of the discipline instilled in you from a young age, and so that probably helped you. Although I'm sure the drill sergeants and the people who were instructing you, they probably wanted to have their say on things too. So they probably gave you a little a little extra attention, if you will, right?
Well, especially in Ranger School where you removed your insignia and you were just a Ranger,
Yeah.
and they didn't care whether you were a West Pointer, ROTC, enlisted, NCO, you name it, you were a grunt, and you were to follow orders and directions from your ranger cadre.
Right, that's right. Yeah, everyone at that point, everyone's equal. They're equally, on the same playing field and everything, and doesn't matter what your rank is. You're there to learn, and those people are there to instruct you, right? And so probably a bit humbling, but it was probably a good experience too, right?
Well, Ranger School was actually the best insurance policy that any officer who was headed for Vietnam, and that's where I was headed, could have. I mean, and it was the most arduous training, both physically and mentally, because they took you to the point of just total exhaustion
Hmm.
and mental exhaustion and hunger. Because if you didn't make your objective for the day, you didn't get your C rations. So
Sure.
I lost about 25 pounds in Ranger School, but it was at that point that they made you the leader. They would say, "Here, take over and run the operation." So you had to stay up with what was going on and where you were, and be on top of things. At a moment's notice, you might have to be replaced. Might take over the unit.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a tough thing to do, especially if you were maybe not in that leadership role the entire time, but then you got kind of thrown into it. If you hadn't been paying as close attention maybe as you should, you're probably setting yourself up for failure there. But hopefully that it's training at that point, so hopefully that sets you up for success in the real world when you actually do get into combat and you are using that as a lesson to help you down the line, right?
Well, I will say that, because of that training, there really was never once in Vietnam that I didn't feel in control of the situation. It didn't mean I wasn't scared. I
Mhm.
was plenty scared, but I always felt as if, I could manage whatever the situation might be. It gave the training gave you a tremendous sense of confidence and courage.
In a startling description, the UN food chief warned the world with the words knocking on famine's door. He called what we're facing a perfect storm of a perfect storm. And he's not alone. Barron's published that a food shortage could be coming even in the US. And farmers see it too. John Boyd Jr., a fourth generation farmer, told Fox News that we're going to see empty food shelves in the coming months. That's why getting survival food is more important than ever now. Create your own stockpile of the best selling 4 Patriots survival food kits. It's not ordinary food. We're talking good for 25 years super survival food. Hand packed in a family owned facility in the USA, and it gives jobs to over 200 Americans. They have different delicious breakfast, lunch, and dinner options, and you can make these meals in less than 20 minutes. Just add boiling water, simmer, and serve. And right now, for the next few days, listeners of Drive On will get 10% off their first order at 4patriots.com by using code DRIVEON. Just go to 4patriots.com and use code DRIVEON to start your stockpile today. Yeah, and that's good, and I think that's what it's intended to do is to give you that confidence so when you are faced with real life and death scenarios, you're able to make those decisions that are necessary and not be paralyzed with fear and just not be able to make those tough decisions that you're gonna have to make, right? And you just sometimes you get that deer in the headlights kinda situation where you just kinda freeze, but if you have the confidence and the courage, like you said, then you can go ahead and make those decisions and, right, wrong, or indifferent, you're making the decision, you're not just freezing, and I think that's the important thing, right?
When the bullets start to fly, everyone in that unit, I mean, you could literally feel their eyes on you, and of course, you're hugging the ground
Yeah,
and trying to get as low as possible, but at the same time, you're the leader, and they're demanding, they're asking for direction, they're asking for orders, right
sure.
or wrong, they want you to tell them what to do.
Mhm.
Um, and that's the point at which you kind of have to reach down deep and John Wayne said it best, courage is being scared to death and saddling up anyway.
Right.
and that's what you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. Yeah, no matter what the situation is, you have to be able to just continue moving forward, um, and not backing down just because maybe you're afraid or, it seems like it's a difficult task or whatever the case may be. You just keep plowing forward, right? Um, so you also were involved with a lot of, helicopter, like, combat assault missions, in Vietnam, right? What was that experience like for you?
Well, I went I was assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division. I was there for about 6 months and then received orders to go over to the 101st Airborne Division. They wanted to keep airborne officers in airborne units. But I arrived after the Tet Offensive of 1968, and all orders, because of officer casualties, had been canceled.
Mm,
And I was reassigned to the 1st Cavalry Division. And the first Cav was the division that invented and tested and perfected the Airmobile concept, which simply is to bring fresh troops to the battle by helicopter as opposed to walking through whatever the terrain might be
right.
to the battle. And consequently, I did make a tremendous number of helicopter combat assaults. We called them Charlie Alphas, CA combat assault. And when there were 3 platoons in my company, whenever it was and we rotated the responsibility of the lead platoon. Whenever it was my turn, my platoon's turn, I was always in the first bird,
Mhm,
um, and I always went in heavy with machine gunner, M79 grenade launcher, radio operator, medic, ammo bearers. I wanted to have as much firepower on that first helicopter as possible. I
right.
made I made about 50 helicopter combat assaults, sometimes twice a day.
Wow. That that's a lot. I mean, especially, when you think about it, when you're going from, um, from wherever you are, wherever your base is, going out into combat, and then getting right back on a bird and going back out and doing it all over again. That's a lot. Anyone who's ever been in combat, could probably attest to this, that going from one place to another, um, you don't know what to expect when you're landing, and that's got to be a difficult thing, right? I got to imagine.
It would it was not unusual to get a radio call saying, "Find an LZ, I've got birds inbound in 20 minutes."
Hmm.
So you had to be prepared to, jump on a helicopter and go.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about LZs, the landing zones that the helicopters came into, is that, they always prepped the landing zone with artillery, and how anything could survive an artillery barrage, I do not know. And then we normally had at least 2 Cobra helicopters supporting the landing, and almost always the first helicopter in, was successful because the enemy always wanted not always, but most often wanted to shoot down the 2nd helicopter.
Mm,
And, then the men on the ground, and those that might have survived the 2nd helicopter crash would have to fight it out on their own, and, the rest of the helicopters would be diverted to an alternate landing zone. They wouldn't risk additional helicopters coming into a hot LZ. So, that was a technique that, normally the NVA and, VC would employ. How they survived that artillery barrage and Cobra helicopters, I don't know. Maybe they were dug in deep,
mhm.
but, it that did happen on several occasions.
Yeah, and they sort of split the force up, right? If first 2 birds are coming down in one area, and then you have, uh, you know, then they have the others coming down someplace else. Now you're split up, and your firepower is distributed amongst different areas, and they're not concentrated on that area where they're starting that initial attack, and so that
Well, and it might just be a couple of enemy soldiers with an RPG to take out that 2nd helicopter,
sure.
and then they would just run for it after that.
So when you were the platoon leader, I'm imagining that's what you said, right, earlier. So for these missions, you're going out, and um, as you were saying, being a platoon leader is a difficult job because everybody has their eyes on you, looking for instructions, looking for, what's the next step, what are we supposed to do when X happens, right? And um, that's your job, is to lead that group of people. What would you say was the hardest part of that job for you?
Well, before I answer that question, let me just say that I think, the platoon leader's life expectancy in Vietnam was 90 days. And I survived my tour. And I did that because I think I did three things very well. Number one is I worked very hard not to do stupid stuff. And now that may sound funny, but it was very serious
Right.
because there were inexperienced officers who did stupid stuff and it cost them their lives. Secondly, I sat down with my platoon sergeant and my squad leaders at the very beginning, and I said, "Listen, you guys have been out in the field a lot longer than I have. I'm still in charge, but I want your advice. And if you see me doing something wrong, I want you to tell me." And that kind of set the tone for my unit. And then thirdly, I trusted my point man and my cover man.
Mhm.
And we operated in I Corps along the demilitarized zone. And most of our time was spent up near the Laotian border, which was three canopy jungle, mountainous, and a very, we were following animal trails, cutting our way. So I trusted my point man and my cover man. If they were moving into an area where they felt uncomfortable, maybe no birds chirping,
Mhm.
no monkeys making noise, or if they just had a sixth sense, and some of these men did have kind of a sixth sense, I would shoot artillery in front of the position that we were going to walk through. This is
Okay.
called reconnaissance by fire. And
Yeah.
I shot a lot of artillery. In fact, I shot so much artillery, they put a budget on me of 25 rounds. The artillery battery got to know my call sign very, very well. But even 25 rounds was enough to make the people feel more comfortable about the potential for not being ambushed.
Sure.
So those are the three things I did that got me through. What was the most challenging thing I had to do? Well, I guess trying very hard not to put men in harm's way. As I
Yeah.
mentioned before, when the bullets fly, you hit the ground, everybody hits the ground, and you have to give direction, you have to give orders,
Mhm.
and sometimes those orders put men at risk, and
Right.
and sometimes it costs them their lives. So you try to make the best decisions you can, but you're under extreme stress. Um, and there were times where that cost men either to be wounded or to be killed.
Right. Yeah. And I think you did the best that you could given the situation, right? I mean, war, there's a saying, war is hell, right? Um, and when you trust the people who are working for you, you know that they have those sixth sense uh, kind of abilities, um, and you trust those. You throw some artillery up ahead. Um, I gotta imagine just that action of trusting those people and kinda clearing the way ahead of you a little bit with that artillery fire, um, that right there probably saved a great number of people because, um, you know, you could have gone continuing walking through the dense jungle and walked right into an ambush, and that could have cost many people, injuries or even their lives. And without the type of leadership that you're just describing, they would have been, you know, in a real bad situation. So I think it's a good thing that you had that kind of foresight and the ability to trust the people who were under you for those types of things because I know you hear these horror stories of officers who just they're in charge and we're doing it my way and this is how it's going to be and we're not that type of thing and it's it's sad because, you have a whole group of people, however many people in your platoon, 40 some odd people, uh, and
How about
and you gotta
28?
trust. Oh, was it less than that? Okay.
No,
Um,
but 28 to 32 is what I had.
okay, okay.
I was
But
authorized 40, but I never had that many.
sure, but regardless of how many it is, you had all those people with all those. They have eyeballs, they have ears, they have their gut feel, and you gotta use it all the available resources that you have, whether it's, just you and a handful of people or a full platoon, regardless of the size, you gotta trust those people. It's kind of funny when I was deployed to Afghanistan, I was a E5 sergeant, and there was a short period of time where things got a little bit messed up with our platoon's leave schedule, and things got all screwed up. And I became the platoon leader for our platoon for a short period of time. I think it was just a couple days. Um, I knew we were pretty screwed then when when I was the one who was in charge of our platoon at that point. But I know just for those couple days that I was the platoon leader, I felt that immense pressure of it's like, hey, I'm in charge of all these people. I'm the one who, if anything happens to these guys, it's on me. And I totally can sympathize with where you're coming from, and needing to do what's right for those people and make sure that they aren't unnecessarily being put into harm's way. Right?
I think that's called the HMFIC, if I'm not mistaken.
I
Those
think
are the
so.
initials.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was just kinda thrown upon me one day, and I looked around, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm the ranking guy here. Alright, I guess we're gonna do it this way for a little bit here." But as soon as, the next higher up came back, I was like, "Alright, it's all yours, sir. Take it away." So, um, so day to day, you said you were going on these missions pretty frequently. Were you doing these combat assault missions? You said what, like 50 of them or so that you said you did. Were there?
During the course of my tour, I made about 50 combat helicopter combat assaults and search and destroy missions. Day-to-day activity was in the field.
Mhm.
We would be out in the field searching for enemy, and we were in a free fire zone, so any anyone we met was considered to be not a friendly, and you would kill them. You would shoot first and worry about the consequences later. But it
Right.
was a free fire zone, and we would stay out for 4 weeks, 5 weeks. Longest I ever stayed out was 6 before
Hmm.
they brought us into uh, the battalion base camp, fire base, and then we would stay there for about a week, pull perimeters security, get showers, hot food, and clean clothes. Um, I I once went 6 weeks without changing clothes, and, you get pretty ripe after that period of time. Your
Yeah.
clothes literally stand up by themselves.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
but, that was the day-to-day routine was to move. We would stay at a night defensive position sometimes a couple of days if we had a very secure landing zone where they could bring in a chopper, and then we would send out patrols on a daily basis and ambushes every night. Otherwise, we would be moving. We would
Hmm.
constantly be moving each of the three platoons in a different path from point A to point B, which might, depending upon the terrain, might be 5, 6 kilometers, might be 8 to 10, but that
Okay.
was the standard activity of the day. Um, as I mentioned, we were out by our area of operation, AO, was the along the demilitarized zone. So on the east was the Gulf of Tonkin, and the terrain there was tumbleweed and sand, no overhead cover, average temperature 105 to 110. Um, and then as you moved toward the west, it became rolling hills and some trees. Um, but it pretty much open territory, and the enemy tended to come across the Ho Chi Minh Trail from Laos into North Vietnam. That was the prime infiltration route.
Mhm.
And so, for the most part, we were in deep three canopy jungle near the Laotian border. That's where we spent most of our time.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about your book. You wrote your experiences, some of the stuff that we're talking about, and your perspectives in your book. Again, it's for the listeners. It's Vietnam Combat Firefights and Writing History. Um, what are the reasons you wrote the book, and why did you write it now?
Well, it took me a very long time to write the book because I had a family to raise once I got out of the service and
Sure.
didn't have any time to do that. And then finally, I had a job that took me on long airplane flights. So I whipped out my laptop as long as it wasn't too bumpy, and I would work on a chapter. And I wrote the book primarily because I thought it would be a good catharsis for me.
Hmm.
Turned out that was not the case because in writing these stories, these unusual things that happened to me, and that's really this is not so much a memoir as it is a series of stories of unusual events that happened to me. And in talking with a lot of veterans, I found that I had had some experiences that they had not, some very unusual experiences. And so in writing and some of those experiences were kind of horrific and some of them were kind of funny, so it's a
Hmm.
mix. Um, but in writing these stories, it just brought back all of the crap that I went through.
Right.
And I didn't really start on the book until about 10 years ago, and it took me a better part of 10 years to write it. And then I got some advice from people whose opinions I trusted, and they said, "You only want to sell this to military people, right?" And I said, "No, I want general readers to be able to read it too." They said, "Well, then you better put more of your personal feelings in it."
Mm.
And that was hard. That was very, very difficult. I remembered that my mother had saved every letter that I wrote home from Vietnam,
Okay.
over 100 letters, and she kept them in the envelope, so they were all date stamped. So I hauled out these letters and I put them in chronological order, and then I would take little snippets out of the letters and put them into appropriate chapters.
Hmm.
So you could read what I wrote as far as what the event was, what the story was, and then you could read what I wrote home about, and they weren't always exactly the same. A little bit of juxtaposition there.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I know. Whenever you write home, you don't necessarily want to worry the folks back home, and so you kind of sugarcoat a little bit of the message before you send it off, right?
Well,
It's
my
not exact.
parents My parents didn't know that I had been wounded until I sent my last box home, and they opened it up and they found my Purple Heart in the box. So that's how they found out that I had been wounded. I didn't tell them. It
Right.
wasn't a serious wound, fortunately.
Well, that is fortunate, obviously, but that is one hell of a way to find out.
It was.
um, so So you took some time. You said it was maybe not as cathartic as you were hoping for it to be. Um, you what did you get out of it as far as the writing process goes? So did it turn out? You know, was it was it all bad as far as the writing process went, or were there some good parts to it?
Well, it's interesting to look back on it because the book was published this year in March, and now that I'm looking back on this period of time, the writing was not cathartic. It brought back a lot of the bad memories
Hmm.
and a lot of the events because I had to describe them in detail.
Yeah.
And what has been beneficial has been to talk about it,
Hmm.
and that I think is something that veterans, all veterans who've been in combat, will say that if you keep it bottled up inside you, it just grows and magnifies. I did suffer some PTSD but not for until about 20 years after I came back. Didn't
Okay.
happen right away. Um, but talking about it and participating in podcast and live presentations, talking about my experiences, has been beneficial for me. I'm much more comfortable with talking about most of the events.
I noticed that myself, just through doing this podcast, I've talked to hundreds of other veterans who are sharing their stories, and sometimes after we're done recording, turn off the recording, and then it's just me and the other person, the guest on the other end, and on occasion, I'll get someone who's like, "I talked about some stuff I really haven't been able to talk about, but it felt good to be able to talk about just by doing this show." And so, um, you know, it I look at it like I think more of us need to get together and just talk and share experiences, whether we serve together or not. Maybe it'd be a good thing for some people to reconnect with the people that you served with, or maybe not. Maybe just getting a group of veterans together and just talking and sharing experiences and not to be a maybe not, a contest of who had it worse or anything like that, but just to talk and share things, with people who understand. You get a group of civilians together who maybe don't understand quite as well, it's probably not gonna work out quite uh, as good as you might think it would. But you get some veterans together and just talking, and having a conversation like we're doing right now and just sharing this. I gotta imagine for a lot of people it's gonna be beneficial to be able to just talk and share and get stuff off your chest, right?
Well, I took over as the president of the New York, New Jersey chapter of the First Cav Division Association. That's a long title, but it's basically that Cav division has a lot of followers and a lot of alumni. And my role, we do quarterly meetings, and I'll probably have about 30 to 35, sometimes 40 veterans come. We even allow a couple of Marines. I know that's a heresy, but we even allow a couple of Marines to come in, and it's open to all branches. Um, and I try to bring in guest speakers who have combat experiences to talk about their events. And I found, as you just said, that that's a very beneficial experience. We had a veteran come in just recently to talk about honor flights, and I don't know if you're familiar with honor flights, but
Yeah.
it's a marvelous nonprofit organization that takes veterans down to the memorial. They fly them down to to see the memorials in D.C.,
Mhm.
and they're pretty much out of World War II and Korea veterans. So the focus now is more on Vietnam vets, and he also talked about his military experience, and I just find that sharing within our group to be very, very healthy and very beneficial to all.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And if nothing else, for the listeners who are hearing that story, they may be sitting there thinking that they're the only ones who experience some terrible thing or some whatever the experience is. But then they start hearing somebody else talking about something similar, not the exact same thing, right? But something similar, and they start saying, "Oh, well, gee, I'm not the only one who's gone through this," and that guy seems like he's doing okay. And what did that guy do? That guy had to have figured something out to kind of work through whatever it is that they're going through. So maybe there's some hope for me too. And that's kind of the point. Like, I like to have people like yourself on to share their stories and talk about some of the things that they've experienced and overcame and all that, because for the listeners who are out there who may be isolating themselves at home and just sitting at home, and maybe they're listening to this podcast and they catch onto something, and it's like, hey, you know what, that guy turned out okay. Maybe there's some hope for me. Maybe I can turn out okay too. It may be a tough road. Maybe you have some work to do, but maybe I could do that too. And I think that's we've come a long way as far as that type of mindset goes. And hopefully that helps some people.
Well, I mentioned before that I wrote this book primarily on long airplane flights coast
Mhm.
to coast, and what I found, my favorite book, by the way, is from Stephen King, and aside from all of his horror stories, he wrote a wonderful book called On Writing,
Okay.
which for any author is just a must read. and he talks about falling into the typewriter, and meaning that he becomes so engaged and so engrossed in telling his story, writing his story, that he literally blocks out everything around him, and
Yeah.
that actually happened to me on several of these flights, as I wrote, that, I could see, uh, incredible detail. It was all there in my mind, and it was
Mhm.
just a matter of bringing it back out. I could see the colors. There were times I even smelled some of the smells, believe it or not.
Yeah. No, I
And
believe it.
I would come away from some of these experiences just sweating, perspiration all over, um, and reliving well, fortunately, I got it down on in my computer, so,
Sure.
that was the important thing.
Right, right. And the way you just described that, kinda, being so engrossed in it and basically blocking everything out, it reminds me of a professional athlete who's, out on the field, and they're ignoring all the hecklers from the audience, and they're ignoring all anything else other than playing the game and doing their job there, and it's, that kinda laser focus that you need, to be able to be successful in, professional sports, but, even in writing, you have, um, you have so much other stuff that's going on around you, especially, on an airplane, you got, people getting up and walking around, and, there's other things going on, you got turbulence and, babies crying, whatever it is that's going on the airplanes, right? Very easy to get distracted, I would imagine. But just being able to have that laser focus and just say straight on, on task, that you're going to get back and you're going to fall back into, like you said, the sights, the sounds, the smells, the, other senses that you probably experienced back then. They're going to start coming back to you because you're so focused and not
Well, and
distracted by those other things.
I've had a lot of, feedback saying that, they couldn't believe all the detail that I was able to incorporate into some of
Hmm.
these, discussions of these events, these rather unusual events that happened to me. They said, I can't, they had had somewhat similar situations, but I
Sure.
described them in such incredible detail that, um, it brought back their own experience as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know a lot of times, especially Vietnam veterans, when they came back home, wasn't the best reception, given the political, cultural climate, whatever you want to call it. And they came back home, exactly welcomed back. The words "welcome home." What do they mean to you? When if someone was to back, meaningful to you now?
Absolutely. It's those are the code words for any Vietnam veteran. And if you say those 2 code words to a Vietnam veteran as opposed to, and there's nothing wrong with "Thank you for your service." That's
Sure.
certainly, an excellent, statement. But for a Vietnam veteran, if you say "Welcome home," it demonstrates that you have a degree of understanding of the fact that we were not welcomed home upon return to the United States. And
Yeah.
very often it brings, uh, tears to our eyes. I mean, those code words can really bring a lump to your throat.
Mm.
Uh, I had a very unusual experience, um, when I was preparing my book. I worked with a good friend who, helped me do a video, because I had a lot of photographs and artwork, and I wanted to incorporate these photographs and artwork into this video. And I had written an essay called "The Trail,"
Hmm.
which was what it was like to walk point down a trail in combat. And so completed the video, and I showed it, to this first Cav group that I mentioned before. And we had a veteran service
Hmm.
officer there who said, "Gee, I recognize some of this artwork. I think I know who this artist is."
Okay.
Well, I didn't know any of the photographers or art. I mean, I attributed them to the first Cav division, but there were no names associated with it.
Hmm.
He said, "I'm gonna contact this, the artist, because I think this is his work." And so I'm taking my son, I'm driving out to college to pick up my son, and I get a phone call on my cell phone, and it says, "Hi, this is, Michael Johnson, and I understand you've used some of my artwork in your video." And I'm going, "Oh my god." I'm thinking lawsuit and
Right.
all kinds of problems, and I said, "Well, listen, I'm driving right now, let me call you." He said, "Well, I haven't seen your video." I said, "Well," I gave him the URL to where he could watch the video, and I said, "I'll call you back in 15 minutes." He said, "Well, I'll watch the video."
Okay.
So I pull over to the side of the road, we go in, my wife is with me, and he calls me back. Sorry. He
That's
calls
okay.
me back and he says, "I wanna thank you so much for using my artwork in your video. You you have you have made me very, very proud." And he talked about the kid who cuts his grass,
Mhm.
and he went out and was wearing his hat and, said young man said, "Oh, yeah, I see you're a Vietnam veteran." He said, "That's right." And at the end of their conversation, this young man said to him, "Welcome home." And this happened about 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And at the end of my conversation with this artist down in Virginia, West Virginia, some places where he was living, he said to me, "Welcome home." And that was the first time that anyone had ever said, "Welcome home" to me.
Wow.
And I just couldn't say anything. I mean, you can tell right now, it breaks me up to tell that story.
Sure. Sure. You know, to me, it's with the culture that we have now, as far as the military goes, where when we were deployed, we came back. There were supporters all over the airports, American flags being waved, people taking time out of their day. They didn't know us from anyone else. They just came because they wanted to support the military, and like that's the way it should be. We got treated with ton of respect. We're flying home on leave, coming back home
Rightly
from that.
so, rightly
that
so.
yeah, exactly. We had people who bought us lunch while we're in the airport, and it was like, just we're there in uniform, and so they obviously knew we're service members, and they paid for our meal, and it was just a nice thing. We didn't expect it, but it was just the way I think service members should be treated with respect, and they should be thanked for their service, and not treated as poorly as folks from your era were, and it's terrible that happened to you. And I try to make it a point whenever I do see a Vietnam veteran hat or shirt, or whatever it is, to kind of tip me off that that person was in Vietnam, to welcome them home, because that it's just it could be that person's first time being welcomed home too. And if you look at the number of years between the time they came home and now, it's long overdue. And so if
It's so much more meaningful to a Vietnam veteran than "Thank you for your service."
Sure.
It just touches that it will touch them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've seen veterans just literally come to tears as a result.
Mhm. So I'd like to ask, if you were to talk to other folks who served in Vietnam, do you have any message for them, especially going through your process of writing your book and kind of trying to heal from the things that you experienced over there? Anything to help those folks who served in Vietnam?
So after about 20 years, after returning and in my civilian career, I started to have, I always tried to take all these horrific things that happened to me, and there weren't that many, but there were some, and I locked them away in what I called my titanium steel trunk at the back of my mind. And man, I had that trunk locked down. There was nothing leaking out.
Right.
But after 20 years, I started to have daydreams, not nightmares, but daydreams. And
Yeah.
and one in particular was recurring. And it was really bothering me tremendously. It could happen at odd times, and I thought I was kind of losing my mind. And I had a friend who I had helped to get her book published, and she was a psychiatrist. And I happened to be in her area, so went to visit, and I said, "Well, I'd like to have a professional meeting with you." And I spent about 2 to 3 hours with her and then described the situation. I kind of really broke down, and I said, This daydream is just bothering me tremendously." She said, "Well, you're experiencing PTSD. Some of that bad stuff is leaking out of your titanium steel trunk." And I said, "Well, what can I do about it?" She said, "Well, I've got some very simple exercise for you to follow." And I followed her instructions. It didn't go away completely, but it softened it so that it was not, interfering with my day to day.
Yeah, and I think, um, the attitude has sort of shifted, in more recent years as far as mental health treatment and support and that type of thing goes. Um, from what I understand, the services and the treatments and understanding of mental health and things like PTSD were slim to none, pretty much almost non-existent uh, back in those days. Um, and so a lot of people probably just didn't get the help that they needed and just sucked it up and dealt with it and locked it in that box, like you described. And those boxes, like you said, tend to leak over time and help to start coming out in ways maybe that you wouldn't expect. Things like what you said, having those daydream kind of things where you're having those visions or flashbacks or whatever you want to call it, and they can be pretty intrusive
It
when
did.
you're dealing with that. And so, I think for the folks who served in any era, but especially Vietnam, because there were not as much support back then. I don't think. Um, you know, go reach out and get the help if you need it. Go find somebody who you can talk to. And like we were saying earlier, even just talking to another vet, it doesn't have to be in a professional capacity. Just talking to another vet about what you dealt with, that could have some healing benefits to it as well. So, do stuff like that, or get professional help if you're at that point where you feel like professional help is needed. There's nothing wrong with it. No one's going to think you're any less of a person because you've gone and talked to somebody and gotten some help. Like it's okay. Like you can go do that, and nobody's going to think any different of it. You know.
Well, and
Um,
the VA seems to, finally have recognized that it is more serious and widespread
yeah,
than, I mean, for the longest period of time, they denied any kind of claims, and now I think they have a little more liberal attitude, and the same is true for Agent Orange, which was a very serious issue for and
that's right.
is a very serious issue for Vietnam veterans.
A tree branch hit a power line in Ohio in 2003 and it shut down 21 power plants, and around 100 people died. We have a power grid that was designed in the 1800s. Even the White House sees it. They're saying two-thirds of the grid are at least 25 years old. So they've recently announced billions of dollars to update it. And how long do you think it'll take to actually do? That's why having your own solar power is more important than ever. With the Patriot Power Generator, you'll get a solar generator that doesn't install into your house because it's portable. You can take it with you, even use it inside. But it's powerful enough for your phones, medical devices, or even your fridge. And right now you can go to 4patriots.com and use code DRIVEON to get 10% off your first purchase of anything in the store, including the Patriot Power Generator. You'll also get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order, plus free shipping on orders over $97, and a portion of every sale is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. So just go to 4patriots.com and use code DRIVEON to get 10% off. Again, that's 4patriots.com. Use code DRIVEON to get yours today. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Um, so before we wrap up this episode, I want to give you a chance to tell people where they can go to get a copy of your book, and your website and any other links or anything like that that you might want to share with people, so that they can find and follow you or whatever it is that you want to support.
So, the nice thing about, writing a book is awards, and I've just won, a wonderful award called the 2023, New York City Big Book Award
Wow.
for nonfiction military, and also the Pencraft Award for war mil- war nonfiction. So those are two awards that are on my book now, and they send out little stickers that I get to put on my book. I also received a marvelous review in the journal On Point, which is the Journal of America of Army History.
Okay.
Wonderful review. So those are some really nice accolades that I've
Okay.
received. If you come to my website, which is www.robinbartlettauthor.com, I have a really robust website with photographs and some videos. I have a video of what it's like to make a helicopter combat assault. I describe it in detail and use some of the photographs that I was able to bring back with me.
Mhm.
And I have several blogs there. You can read a free chapter, and I have a special for the holidays of 1995. So my book is a hardback, and I'll autograph it and send it for free for 1995. It's a great deal.
That is a great deal. And especially the way prices are going with everything these days. I think you can't find a better deal than that. The book again for the listeners, Vietnam Combat Firefights and Writing History. I'll have the links for all of that in the show notes. Definitely take advantage of the that offer. Try to get that book. But yep, yeah, have the book here. And definitely go, like I said, take a look at that book. Again, links will be in the show notes. Before we wrap this up, though, I want to do a segment. I love doing this segment with other veterans. It's it's usually a fun time. It's called "Is It Service Connected?" And the segment is essentially for anyone who is unfamiliar with it. It's sort of like America's Funniest Home Videos, military edition. So we kind of watch videos of service members doing something stupid, and a lot of times they fall, they get injured, whatever. But it's usually good for a decent laugh. And then we kind of joke about whether or not that would be a service connected injury with the VA somewhere down the line. So I'm gonna get this video pulled up here so our guests here can see it as well. Let's grab that. And so I got the video up here. Let's take a look for the listeners who can't see the video. I'll try to describe it as best I can. Right now, it looks like a bunch of soldiers maybe standing up in the back of a pickup truck. Let's play this and see what happens. Okay, they're standing up there on the side of the pickup truck, hits a bump and lands on their back, kind of on their head. Um, yeah, that that did not look like a great situation, for that guy who was hanging onto the back. It kinda like he was hanging on the back almost like they used to do on the garbage trucks, the way they were they were driving there. I always wondered how they would hold on the whole way with that, like, with all the potholes and everything else that might be on the road, how they ended up doing that, but that's kinda what it looked like with this guy here, so I gotta imagine that would probably be, qualifying for some sort of service connection if there was some serious injury going on there. He might have hit his head on the ground when he went down, so who knows? But anyways, Robin, again, thank you again for taking the time to join us. I do appreciate you not only coming out to share your story with us, but writing the book and getting your story out there because I think a lot of people, to your point earlier, not just in the military community, but civilians, people just from all walks of life, really do need to understand a little bit more about um, what goes on when we do send our young men and women overseas to fight on our behalves. And this is one person's slice of the story. This is kind of one piece of a really big picture, but it helps to paint the picture. To get an idea of what it's like, and not every day is uh, but not every day is going to be the same. So you may have some days that are calmer than others. But war is very fluctuating, and people need to understand that and kind of get a better understanding of it. And I think books like yours and stories like you just told here on the show really go a long way to help do that. So thank you again.
That's a very good description.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Drive On podcast. If you want to support the show, please check out Scott's book, Surviving Son, on Amazon. All of the sales from that book go directly back into this podcast and work to help veterans in need. You can also follow the Drive On podcast on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts.